Look in a mirror. Ask yourself a question. Who is it that answers? That inner voice you hear, that constant narrator of your life, feels eternal, fundamental. But what if it isn't? What if that voice is an invention? A ghost that learned to speak only yesterday in the long timeline of human history. There is a radical, almost forgotten theory that suggests our ancestors, the builders of pyramids and the heroes of Troy, did not think like we do. They did not have an internal monologue. They were not conscious in the way we are. When faced with a novel situation, they did not introspect. They did not weigh options in the quiet theater of the mind. They waited for a command, a voice they believed belonged to a god. But the god was not in the heavens. The god was in the other half of their own brain. This is the story of the mind before consciousness, the story of the silent man. How do you prove what happened inside a mind 3,000 years ago? The evidence is not in bone, 'tis in the words they left behind. Their epics and scriptures are the fossil record of their consciousness. Take the Iliad, the blueprint of the heroic age. Its characters are driven by passion and fury, but you will search its pages in vain for a single instance of introspection, for a moment where a character thinks to himself, "What should I do?" Achilles does not decide to restrain his anger. The goddess Athena appears, visible and audible only to him, grabs him by the hair and commands him to stop. The gods were not metaphors. They were the decision-making process. The pattern is echoed in the earliest books of the Old Testament. Abraham does not debate the morality of sacrificing his son. He simply hears the command of God. Moses doesn't see a burning bush and interpret it as a divine sign. He hears a voice speak directly from the flames. These were not men wrestling with their conscience. They were bicameral men, taking direct neurological dictation, which they experienced as the voice of an external deity. And what of their idols? The silent, staring statues of gold and stone that filled their temples. They were not mere symbols. They were necessary anchors, giving a physical location to the disembodied voices they heard within.
My words.
For millennia, this mental model was stable. A world run by gods, speaking directly to the minds of men. But this delicate symbiosis between the two halves of the brain was fragile. It required order, it required isolation, and history was about to unleash chaos. Around 1200 BC, a perfect storm of catastrophes swept across the ancient world. The Bronze Age collapse. Civilizations that had stood for 1,000 years were turned to dust by famine, invasion, and climate change. In a world of chaos, waiting for the voice of a god was a death sentence. The need for quick, individual, novel decision-making became paramount. The gods were falling silent when they were needed most. At the same time, a revolutionary technology was spreading: writing. For the first time, language had a permanent home outside the brain. A man could read the words of another man, creating a new, metaphorical space, an inner world. This new technology and societal chaos created a catastrophic pressure on the bicameral mind. The divine voices, once clear and authoritative, became weak, confused, and contradictory. The bridge between the two halves of the brain began to crumble. And in the ruins of that collapse, something new and terrifying was born. The hallucinated voice of the god retreated, becoming internalized. It became a new narrative. The voice of a self, an I. It was the birth of consciousness. This was not a gentle awakening. It was a violent, anxious, disorienting experience. To be left alone for the first time in history with nothing but your own thoughts. The bicameral mind collapsed. The direct line to the gods was severed, and a new, silent, anxious consciousness took its place. But did that ancient mental operating system vanish completely? Or does it still echo in the static of the modern brain? Consider the prophetess and the saint. Joan of Arc, a simple farm girl who heard the voices of angels guiding an army. History calls it faith. The bicameral theory calls it a cognitive throwback, a temporary reopening of the ancient pathways. Consider the modern diagnosis of schizophrenia, the experience of hearing voices that are not one's own, that command and comment. While a debilitating illness, could it be a dysfunctional echo of our bicameral past? The voice of a god without a culture to give it meaning. And one of the most cherished of human experiences. Inspiration, the muse. That feeling every artist, musician, and scientist knows, of an idea arriving fully formed. A sudden flash of insight that feels less like a product of thought and more like a message received. This is the flow state. A moment of egoless creation where the conscious, narrating self falls silent, and we allow the other hemisphere, the ancient, silent, creative partner, to speak. The voices of the gods are not gone. They have simply been renamed. We call them intuition, inspiration, genius. They are the echoes in us. From a mind commanded by gods to a mind haunted by a self. This has been the journey of human consciousness. We gained the power to write our own story, but in exchange, we were given the burden of doubt. We lost the divine certainty of our ancestors. And so, we spend our lives trying to fill the silence the gods left behind. We build towers of science to search for answers in the cosmos. We build temples of faith to search for a voice greater than our own. And we lose ourselves in art and music, desperate to feel a part of something larger. Perhaps the final echo of this ancient mind lies in the secret worlds of our own childhood. Before the self becomes so loud that it drowns out all other voices. So, the next time you hear that voice in your head, ask yourself, is it truly you, or is it just the last faint echo of a silent god?